Known for smelling horrible, fights with long swords, and life-depending sports events, today's video is about fast food culture in Birmingham. No. Rome. Ancient Rome, specifically. To understand the birth of fast food, you have to stop imagining the pristine, white-tailed kitchens of today. Instead, you should picture the sensory overload of ancient Rome. Welcome to the thermopolium. To understand why the thermopolium was so revolutionary, we need to look at the massive gap between the Roman wealthy and the working class. Food in ancient Rome was a way to show your status. If you were a member of the elite, your home was a place of culinary excess. The Roman dinner party was an elaborate hours-long performance. Wealthy Romans reclined on couches in a U-shaped arrangement called triclinium. They ate expensive delicacies to show how far their influence stretched. Peacocks from the east, oysters from the British coast, and spices from India. These meals were heavily seasoned with garum and expensive wines, often sweetened with honey or spiced with expensive pepper. However, the experience was different for about 95% of the population. Most Romans lived in the insula, which were crowded apartment blocks. These buildings were dark, cramped, and dangerous. Most rooms did not even have a kitchen because of the extreme fire risk. If you were lucky, you had a small portable brazier. As a result, the average Roman diet relied on three main staples: grain, oil, and wine. The government provided a grain dole to help people survive, so wheat was like the backbone of pretty much every meal. Most of the urban population ate pulse. They added whatever vegetables or bits of fat they could afford. Meat was rare and usually only eaten during religious festivals. People worked from sunrise to sunset, laborers hauling stone, soldiers on duty. They were tethered to the street all day. They could not go home to cook, and they did not have the time to sit for long meals. The general food culture for commoners was defined by survival and finding quick, cheap ways to get flavor. If the Roman elite were dining on peacocks, the rest of the city was lining up at the thermopolium. These were not fancy restaurants, they were essentially tiny, street-facing shops carved into the front of apartment buildings. They served as the literal engine of the Roman working class. Imagine walking down a narrow street in Pompeii or Rome. You'd see a shop with a wide open front counter made of masonry. Inset into that stone counter were large terracotta jars called dolia. They were deep, sunken into the counter and kept warm by hot coals or embers placed in a space beneath them. Each jar held a different prepared dish. You would walk up to the counter, point at a jar, and the shopkeeper would ladle out a serving of stew, lentils, or spiced meat. It was the original grab-and-go service. There were no tables, no chairs, and no waiting for a waiter to take an order. You paid your coins, grabbed your bowl, and either ate standing up at the counter or took your food to go. The menu was designed for speed and energy, focusing on four main pillars: legume stews, sausages, garum, and wine. Legumes like beans and lentils were the primary protein sources. Sausages, known as lucanica, were typically made from pork, seasoned with cumin, bay leaves, and plenty of pepper, and then smoked or grilled. Everything was doused in garum, a pungent, fermented fish sauce that provided an intense hit of salt and umami. Finally, no meal was complete without a side of bread and a drink, usually cheap wine mixed with water and spices to mask the taste of lower quality fermentation. Graffiti etched into the walls of surviving Thermopolia and Pompeii gives us a peek into what happened there. You find advertisements for upcoming gladiator matches, insults directed at rivals, and crude jokes. It was where the news of the city spread. If you wanted to know what was happening in the forum or the political scene, you went to the local snack bar. It is remarkably similar to how we function today. Bye.